Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is October 13th, and right now we are looking at the infrared satellite imagery here across the Pacific Ocean. You can see BC, Washington, Oregon, Idaho here. You can see this cutoff low continuing to exist here north of Hawaii. You can see the big ridge building across the Pacific Northwest here. It's going to bring some warm weather up through the weekend here. Before we have a pattern change potentially on through the extended forecast, we'll take a look at that in some detail coming up. You can kind of see this little upper level low off the California coast here, right over Southern California, producing a few lightning strikes this morning here. Kind of interesting down there. But looking a little bit closer here on the visible satellite imagery, you can see that Cedar Creek fire pumping out tons of smoke. It's impacting the Willamette Valley right now. And check out all this smoke here through the northern Puget Sound areas here. You can really see it in the valleys. The Snoqualmie River Valley showing up here as well. And so I feel sorry for you if you're north of Seattle right now. Some of this is probably going to move down the Puget Sound as well. And you can see some high clouds moving over the top. Otherwise, you can see some of that smoke drifting down the east slope of the Cascades. But really, the North Puget Sound through southwest BC, even in the Strait of Juan de Fuca, there's really got it the worst this morning, along with the areas down here dealing with that Cedar Creek fire smoke. So checking things out at SeaTac, another nice day yesterday, 69 degrees, above average. Didn't get that record high set back in 2006, but we're going to have another chance here as we go through this weekend to hit one of these record highs here coming up and potentially reach the latest 80-degree day ever at SeaTac. If we hit 80 on the 15th or 16th, we would break that record. You can see that record high of 80 set back in 1961 there. Here's Portland. You can see 80 degrees, 14 degrees above average. Another record high there. You can see that's 1, 2, 3 so far this year, and there's a chance here in the next few days Portland could get another one of these record highs and get it to fall here. Pretty interesting. Nice warm October here continues for sure. Here's Spokane with a graphic here talking about 70-degree days and the all-time record for most 70-degree days in October. They're probably going to break some of these records here coming up as we keep going through the month here on this pace. You can see Pendleton, Oregon here, a nice little graphic they're showing here, the week outlook. Upper 70s with some chilly overnight lows, but light winds, sunny skies, and dry. So everybody's just kind of waiting for the pattern change here across the region, hoping we can get some precip to put out some of these fires. Now, take a look at this high-resolution model. This is vertically integrated smoke, and you can really see the fires pumping smoke out and around through the Puget Sound, Willamette Valley here. And now as we go on into Saturday morning, look at some of the smoke that is going to move over the area Friday night on in through Saturday morning. Just putrid smoke. I can't wait to get rid of these fires here. And I know, people living north of Seattle through the Puget Sound up through southwest BC and in the valleys are just dealing with some really degraded air quality, especially this morning. And that's going to continue here for the next couple of days. Now taking a look at the European on the left, the GFS on the right. Here's North America, BC, Washington, Oregon here. Big ridge over us now, as you can plainly see here. You can see that cutoff low well out over the Pacific Ocean here. And as we go into the future here, a little bit more ridge wanes just a tiny bit there. Then it rebuilds over the area. Then we try to get this system move close. It doesn't really get that close. It's been backing off on this troughing kind of off the west coast of North America here. And most of that energy is going to slide down in towards California. The GFS has a little bit closer to the coastline there. But the story here for us is we're going to continue this ridging, although the bulk of it pushes off to the east here, as you can see. And then we redevelop it a bit. But then you can see the next polar lobe. Good agreement on both models, swinging through Alaska here on the European and the GFS, settles down over the Pacific Northwest. Right now, the European definitely showing a more dynamic system here coming across the area as a GFS, a little bit weaker with the trough, but we're still pretty far out. This is still 10 days out, actually 9.5 right now. But we're going to be watching the system coming up here. It's what you're hearing a lot of chatter about on Twitter and on social media and the news, a potential pattern change. And this is it right here. So we're looking at now the European ensemble mean, the GFS ensemble mean. The GFS comprises of 30 different members. The European has 50 different members. This is just an average of that. So let's go ahead and see what this shows. You don't want to ever just look at a deterministic model here and just go with that. You want to look at the ensembles as well. So going off in the extended, you see the ridge finally start to give way here, showing it's hanging on more on the GFS here, as you can see 198 hours out. But you can see eventually it does give way, and we show this troughing develop on the west coast. Now you can see the European definitely much more favorable. This troughing center is right over Western Washington and British Columbia here. Yeah, but both models do show it there. So we have put pretty good agreement there. Confidence is fairly high for this time frame here. We're looking at about 10 days here. So as high confidence as you get in the 10-day frame there, this is it. I mean, we're showing a pretty good signal here for a pattern change coming up. Now, this is the European Ensemble control run. So this is the most likely outcome based on the Ensemble members. Pretty similar thing going on here. Weak system moves down towards California, rebuild the ridge, polar lobe comes swinging down, and you can see that really come down over British Columbia and Washington. Swings through, but then we keep an active pattern kind of going here. As you can see, a stronger gradient, more zonal flow here, and then the Gulf of Alaska troughing maybe towards the end of October. But it definitely does not look like the huge ridging is going to exist as we get through later October coming up here. Now, taking a look here, this is the European deterministic, just kind of showing you the lack of precipitation we're going to be getting here for the next several days. That weak system tries to approach the coastline. Maybe will impact some of the areas of the BC coast here as we go through early next week. It'll cool us down a bit. Another strong system there for southeast Alaska rolling through the area. And then that pattern changes. The polar lobe starts to move down out of Alaska and starts to bring much cooler air and potential precipitation across Pacific Northwest, as you can see out towards the 9 to 10 day period here. So fingers crossed. Checking out Seattle, look at this. This would be the latest 80-degree day, like I said, here for Seattle. If we hit 80 on Sunday there, then you can see the potential cool down with that system getting nudging the ridge a little bit further to the east, and then maybe off through the extended, that much colder air arriving. Quileute, not much to talk about there. Pretty typical for the Washington coast. Not much temperature variation between overnight lows and daytime highs a lot of times. So that's Quileute, Washington. Here's Brookings, Oregon. Some nice warm days in there with some cooler days as well, where the marine influence will be more substantial. But you can see off through this week towards the weekend, next weekend here even, should be fairly nice weather out there for some of the Oregon coast, as long as you're not dealing with the low clouds or the Cedar Creek fire smoke down there. Spokane, nice stretch of weather coming up here. A lot of days in the 70s, chilly overnight lows, and then the potential pattern change to the extended shown there. Portland, some nice warm days coming up here through this weekend too. Then that system gets a little bit close to us here, and then the potential pattern change to the extended. Now looking at Portland International, you can see the signal pick up here on the European about the 22nd into the 23rd. Looking at Seattle, you can see the same thing here. More rain expected for Seattle, at least in this run here. You can see the mean is now calling for over 2 inches by the time we get to the October 27th time frame. You can see the control has less here, but at least some precipitation showing up in the models now. Stevens Pass, for example, control and the mean showing this signal as well. Mount Baker ski area, look at this, 4+ inches of rain. Pretty good agreement here as we get towards later October. Now look at some of the snowfall potential we have with this pattern change too. We'd have much colder air through the area. This is the Mount Baker ski area. You can see, look at the control run has 20 inches of snow falling by the night of October 24th there. So again, we're still a little ways out here. You can see we've got several days to go before we get to this point here, but you can see the mean also showing above 15 inches. So a nice base could be built up there starting in October for Mount Baker. You can see Snoqualmie Pass, not as much snowfall. Some members don't have anything here, but it does show that signal for the colder air coming through. And of course, the further south you get, it gets a little bit tougher. Here's Mount Hood also showing all the Ensemble runs, showing just a little bit of snow in a lot of these, but substantial snowfall in a few of them. Now here's the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook. You can see a little bit above average here for the Pacific Northwest still. We'll still be dealing with some of that ridging here in the early stages of this forecast. But look at this signal here getting a little more intense here, especially for Washington, Oregon, Pacific Northwest, showing that above average signal. Now taking a look here, this is the risk of heavy precipitation. Experimental forecast here. You can see they're calling for the slight risk here for Western Washington, Oregon, all the way even down into Northern California. This would include British Columbia as well. This is for October 21 to 25 time frame. You can see really the only place in the country with this hazard posted. Just kind of an experimental long-range product that NOAA does. Now check this out. A new La Nina advisory has been issued today, October 13th. And the big takeaway from this is that, let's see here. So 75% chance of La Nina during the Northern Hemisphere winter here, and then 54% chance for neutral conditions coming between February and April here. But the big takeaway from this is that the forecaster consensus for this month favors, let me highlight that, a later transition to ENSO neutral during February, April 2023. So they push back that La Nina all the way into probably existing through February and then probably going through some kind of transition through March into April. But like it says here, predicting the timing of transitions is challenging, and there continues to be uncertainty over how long La Nina may last. But they pushed back the timing a little bit here. So La Nina lovers, enjoy it while it lasts here, because probably after this winter here, we're going to be into neutral or even El Nino conditions here over the next couple of years. So yeah, that's kind of what the update says there. They do those monthly updates. Now, taking a look here, you can see October 13th. This is where we are now. This is across the equator. This is 850 millibars, 5,000 foot winds. This is one way they measure the Madden-Julian oscillation here. And you can see these easterly anomalies exist here over this area. So this is wind pushing from east to west, meaning that the Madden-Julian oscillation remains over the maritime continent here. You can kind of see it here on the forecast going all the way out. But as you go out towards October 21st and 22nd, you can kind of see these anomalies start to wane a bit. That means the Madden-Julian oscillation would potentially be on the move and move out into the Western Pacific a bit more. And that kind of coincides with our pattern change here. But that is kind of a signal there, just kind of trying to explain what the Madden-Julian oscillation is doing. There's some really good models out there that kind of show what's going on, but we still, like I said before, we don't really understand this feature fully. It does encircle the entire planet. It's kind of been stuck here over the maritime continent for a while, and you can see the signal not really relenting too much, but it does show a portion of that moving out into the Western Pacific, and that kind of coincides with our pattern change here in the Pacific Northwest. So what does that mean? You can see this precipitable water here. This is the Pacific Ocean. Here's Japan over here. Here's the maritime continent over here. Here's Washington, Oregon, California. There's Hawaii. And you can see the Western Pacific here really is a hot spot. It just builds up tons of warm, moist air. So it is a dynamic player in when we try to transfer this energy to the poles. The Earth wants to balance out the cold air over the poles versus the warmer air over the tropics. So when you introduce this energy from a certain spot, then you build a ridge, and then you trough, and then you ridge again. And we've been dealing with this ridging because that pattern has been stuck. The MJO over the maritime continent is my best educated guess as to why we're dealing with the Rossby wave train of troughs and ridges just hanging over our area here. So as this Madden-Julian oscillation moves out to the east a little bit more, that can throw a little wrench into things and change that ridging and troughing position and open up the troughing here for the Pacific Northwest. It depends on where this energy is entering our jet stream, really. So just thought you guys might like to see that. And if we put this in motion, you can really see the moisture moving across the tropics. Here's Australia down here. This is the whole view of the entire Pacific Ocean here. And as you can kind of see the daily, the daily convection moving around in the precipitable water here. But yeah, the Western Pacific is just a hot spot for that. That's why the Madden-Julian oscillation and El Nino and La Nina is so important. With El Nino, you start to move this warmer water out across the equatorial Pacific here, and you bring more convection. And that's why California gets much wetter winters here during an El Nino year. So maybe in the next couple of years, we'll get an El Nino and it'll finally break some of that drought for California. But again, that's way off into the future here. So anyway, I hope you guys are having a good day. Keep clicking like and subscribe. If you guys haven't take a look at that meteor video I just happened to get last night on my Nest cameras out there. Maybe I'll try to put it in on, I'll show it at the end of this video here, and you guys can just click on that and watch it. But anyway, yeah, we'll continue to watch this extended forecast, kind of getting excited. It's still a little bit out there in fantasy right now, so we're just kind of, I'm biding my time here before I start to get hyped up about that big trough moving over the Pacific Northwest. We want to see a little bit more consistency and get a little bit closer to the event before we start sounding the alarms, but it does look promising right now. So anyway, hope you guys are having a good day, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.